In general, the poem speaks about, someone works really, really hard at creating something, making something, but the creator never gets a chance to see the fruits of his or her own labor. Somebody else benefits from them. So the first line is Guli ke khum bedadum peach tabish. The first line, if we were to kind of give commentary to some of the key words here, it takes a while for any seed to bear flowers. You plant them, somewhere in the belly of the earth, and then you hope that it gets enough water, you hope that it gets enough light perhaps, certain kinds of nourishment, and so that, the seed can kind of crack the skin and slowly come up to the surface. That's a, tough place to be. Miraculously, as you sit there looking at the ground, all of a sudden you see this tiny little green stem kind of coming out of the earth. And you're happy, you rejoice. And you give it some nourishment, and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait for months, perhaps years. And all of a sudden you see this flower slowly budding. And so in the first line he's saying, there is this flower that I created, I designed. But do you know how? Do you know how it was nourished? Ze'ab didegunum dadam abish. Plants need water. I didn't turn on the hose to give it water. It was my tears. What nourished, the seed, the moisture that quenched the thirst of the stem, and through patience and through the tears of my eyes, eventually this flower just blossomed. And I suppose anyone who has ever created something beautiful, you could kind of symbolize it as, as a beautiful flower. Whether, you work really, really hard in a relationship to beautify relationship with your companion, whether you sit in a cave, you're trying to figure out the mysteries of life, who you are, what you are, if God exists, and eventually something comes about. Whether you're Karl Marx, where you get up at 3 in the morning and you go to the factories and you see all these little kids being exploited by an uncaring, cruel, unjust system, and then you come back home and you write down notes about what you witnessed. Whether you sit home, you read books, you take notes, you make your notes into a lecture, you go into the classroom and you present this beautiful sermon to your students. Whether you perfect your language and you make it really clear and articulate and you hope that it reaches the ears of people. The point is that flower symbolizes anything that anyone does that is beautiful. It's not a thorn, it's a flower. You have Gilgamesh, who was a thorn as a human being, but the gods favored him. He loved, he lost, he grieved, he became lonely, he was in despair. He had to go through many trials and tribulations, and eventually became a flower of a human being. Since Baba Taher is to some extent a religious, spiritual man, I'm guessing that the flower he's talking about has some spiritual qualities to it. Now, the problem with the world of spirituality is that it contains a lot of yearning and longing. There's a good amount of separation. And in separation there is fear, there is anxiety, there is frustration, there is despair, there is loneliness, there is anguish, there is dread, thoughts of suicide, meaninglessness, isolation. It's just such a bad place to be for any human being. If you are the creator of this flower, it means that there has to be a good amount of psychic tension inside you. Union, separation, longing, yearning. And it's not just pain. It's a pain that to some extent lives in your soul, and it hits a nerve to the point where the pain morphs itself into sorrow. And when you are sorrowful, tears begin to roll down your cheeks. And in every single drop, there's an ocean of sorrow in it. It contains a good amount of awareness that you are kind of to some extent homesick Whatever flower Baba Taher is talking about, what he's saying is that, you see this flower here, but what you don't see is it has gotten water through my tears, and I have tears because of sorrow, and I have sorrow because of separation. And that's what this, third and the fourth lines are all about. That is it really fair? Is it really just that I create the flower, but somebody else takes the nectar, the very marrow of this flower, the very juice that kind of makes this flower a flower with all the beautiful fragrance? How is it that this is something that I, create, but someone else benefits from it? If you consider Jesus Christ to be a flower, and he gave birth to his emotions, he was the one in the desert for 3 years or 18 years, he was the one who had to wrestle with Satan. He was the one who had to kind of walk away from his mom, from his dad, from his community, because of all the conflict and misery that lived inside him. So he goes for 18 years, he comes back, and he has a flower, he has a message. It's a good news, it's a gospel, and it's something that can inspire people, that can change them, transform them. Sure, it comes with difficulties, you may have to kind of examine why you want to get married, you have to examine why you are married, you have to examine why you want to have children, you want to examine why you have to do anything for Caesar, for the world. It's a difficult thing, but it's a price worth paying. So what happens? What happens to this flower? It gets caged. They create an institution. It's a flower in the hands of other people that slowly withers. It's a flower that exists only in name. There is no reality to this flower anymore. You could even consider this to be, a teacher trying to make the human heart into this beautiful flower. Make it feel intensely about the right things. Make it think intensely about the right things. And what do teachers have? Teachers have experience that they have gained through struggle, through suffering, through sacrifice, through weeping. And what happens to students? They kind of get lost on the way. They get in front of the classroom and they enjoy the power. They become attracted to the power, and they forget the reason why they majored in philosophy or they became a Christian in the first place. I don't know how teachers these days do it to kind of make a human being who is filled with thorns and trash, to get rid of all that stuff and replace them with flowers. There is so much nonsense that lives inside people that you have to kind of get rid of. And then you have to deal with their anger and despair. And then you have to make sure that their anger and despair are kind of channeled in the right way, and they cry for the right reasons. They become angry for the right reasons. And hopefully in the end, something beautiful and majestic can be created inside them. And because, most of us, we've never really created flowers. But when we do, it's an experience you've never had. And that flower gets a lot of attention. And you have no idea what to do with this newfound power. And it contaminates you, it corrupts you. But as long as you're broken in the right way, and as long as that brokenness continuously allows you or enables you to shed tears, that becomes a protective mechanism.